Welcome back to the NUTRIMEDICAL Report, and we have a remarkable book you must get. If you're listening to this program regularly, every 2 weeks we have Jonathan Gray on, probably one of the most remarkable men in current history, an ancient archaeologist, a believer, who has been, you've always had your skepticals on instead of spectacles. And you've gone through and actually proved to yourself not only is the Bible true, but had many converts of people. And this chapter we're going to talk about today is interesting. Chapter 14 of The Forbidden Secret. And if you haven't got this book already, you want to order it at beforeus.com, beforeus.com. This chapter 14 is From Another Dimension, ? Who are the aliens? Now, of course, there's a lot of programs that bring out issues about the aliens, and in most places, whether it's Coast to Coast Radio or Rents Network or anywhere in the bookstores, television shows, Nat Geo or whatever, people just walk away more confused, more victimized than ever because they don't want to seek out the truth from the Bible, which literally gives you the mathematical corollaries of the nature of the universe, our Creator, what we are, and the actual events that are going on in our universe. So people are always victims. And so let's tell us the history of how you got to this point, because I'm sure it's quite remarkable and covers generations.
Yes, it does, actually. My grandfather was on my father's side, was one of the leading, well, you might say ufologists as well as spiritists of his day. And it became very, very evident as I was growing up that there was something fishy about the whole thing, and that the two were connected. And the connection wasn't apparent until I began to investigate as an archaeologist, and I got into old reports plus modern sightings, and then started talking to and investigating what the ufologists themselves are saying. And this chapter actually has resulted from that, and we've got a rather mind-blowing story to share today.
Yes, indeed. Let's talk about it. You have an interesting story as the top of the chart starts out. The chapter starts out with J. Allen Hynek. Tell us a story about Project Blue Book, which is the U.S. Air Force special project dealing with, quote, alien phenomena, which a lot of people say, oh my gosh, Deagle, why are you getting into this? Well, because spiritual deception has many faces, and this is one of the worst.
Yes, it is, most definitely. Blue Book actually listed almost 13,000 reports, and over 700 of those could not be explained. The rest could be explained away, and that wasn't any problem, but the 700 was still a formidable amount. And the conclusion, of course, of Project Blue Book was that UFOs do not pose a threat to national security. They weren't able to identify them, but it got the government off the hook, an easy way out. And the Condon report that followed later on followed the same line.
Right.
Now, Hynek was a UFO skeptic at the start, but he became convinced that a certain proportion of claimed sightings should be studied. And he founded the Center for UFO Studies, known as CUFOS. And he did this with the man who's now quite famous, actually, for his UFO research, Jacques Vallée.
Right.
Now, at this time, there was physical evidence that was hard to explain. Things like depressions in the ground, burnt and damaged plants, scorch marks, and so on, that would take longer than normal to recover. Just normal regeneration just didn't take place.
Yeah, evidence of radiation, too, right?
Yeah, radiation was involved.
Yeah.
Now, way back in 1976, Hynek made this conclusion, and he was interviewed by a guy who was also well known in this field, but his statement was that the UFO phenomenon has paranormal aspects. It also has very real physical aspects.
Right.
And he said the attitude we're taking in our studies is that because we have so many scientists involved, we'll push the physical approach as hard and fast as we can with instrumentation, physical evidence, photographs, radar records, and so on. But if we're finally forced by the evidence to go into the paranormal, then we'll be prepared to do so. That was his statement, a rather honest one.
That's really interesting. And again, that's why if you have an honest skeptic, that's the best way to approach the facts, isn't it?
Yes. The next year, 1977, he was interviewed, and in this interview, he said the extraterrestrial theory is running up against a very big difficulty, namely that we are seeing too many UFOs on this little planet. We're just a spot in the universe. Why should we be honoured with so many visits? And so the interviewer said, well, what's your hypothesis? And his answer was, I'm inclined to think in terms of meta-terrestrial, a sort of parallel reality.
Right.
Now, Newsweek interviewed Hynek, and he repeated that. He said UFOs may be psychic phenomena, and the aliens may not come from outer space, but from a parallel reality. And Newsweek reported that in its issue of November 21, 1977. Now, we noted that Hynek was formerly a skeptic. He had also written many technical papers and textbooks on astrophysics. And he was a credible scientist, very reliable. And he surrounded himself with others of the same kind, and he investigated UFOs for nearly 40 years. Well, he submitted that perhaps UFOs were a part of a parallel reality that was slipping in and out of sequence with their own. But this pained him because he was a scientist. Yet, after 30 years of interviewing witnesses, investigating sighting reports, investigating radar contacts and physical traces of saucer landings, and various other hypotheses, nothing else seemed to make sense to him. Now, among the things that were noted was that in all the millions of sightings, there had never been one radar detection of a UFO entering from outer space into our atmosphere. The extraterrestrials appear also quite able to breathe in Earth's atmosphere without any equipment to breathe with their lungs naturally. It's almost as though they belonged here. And
exactly.
Even though they'd been fired on so many times, no confirmed UFO crash had come down from all those shootings. And startlingly, no UFOs seen at different times even looked exactly alike. So the observations that were made were these. One, these are here. There's no question about it. They're real. They apparently emanate from our own planet Earth. Yet, although visible, they may not be naturally physical entities. They appear to be not bound by the same material physical laws, and we can mention those in a few minutes, what those laws are that they're breaking. Okay. Now, Hynek and Valley mentioned this. They said that UFOs, if they're somebody's nuts and bolts hardware, we must explain some tangible things that we would have to understand them in relation to. Firstly, they can change shape in front of our eyes. Secondly, they can vanish, not even leaving the grin of a Chinese or the Cheshire cat. They just melt away in front of us. Or they apparently materialise mysteriously in front of us without any apparent detection by persons nearby. And we must wonder too, they said, whether UFOs are hiding. Where are they when they're not showing themselves to human eyes? Now, here are scientists. These are serious scientists admitting that UFOs materialise and dematerialise, apparently. Now, this does suggest another dimension, Dr. Bill.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's more than that. Now, Hynek revealed that there are quite a few reported instances where two distinctly different UFOs, hovering in a clear sky, will converge and eventually merge into a single object. So, he was joined by John Keel, another famous UFO researcher who's written many UFO books, including the Mothman Prophecies. I think everybody's heard of the Mothman Prophecies. And later a Hollywood movie of that name was made.
Keep that thought. When we come back, we've got lots more that's going to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. But we have to face the reality of our world and know the demonic powers of darkness. We won't understand and become victims. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report, and of course, this is also the Clay and Iron Show, which explains the issue of clay and iron from the prophecy of Daniel. It says they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, and we know that the ancients did have contact with beings, and the best way to describe them is I call IFOs, identified fiendish objects, or transdimensionals. I don't like this word aliens. In fact, many of them are actually probably from a parallel dimension, maybe from the, literally, that's why the world of thought, the world of the mind, which these beings can invade in people's dreams even, why the physical world, why there's the ability to leap across these dimensional boundaries is really to their level of culture. And if you talk to researchers like Dr. Michio Kaku and others that talk about membrane theory and the multiverse and the multidimensional universe, it's really not too far gone in terms of even current levels of thinking in terms of the structure of the universe and dark matter. The fact is that we're dealing with a world that's highly populated with intelligent and very malevolent beings, as well as higher orders of very godly beings that are the sons of the Most High God. Literally, his angels are representatives. And if people say, well, that doesn't exist, I say, well, I'm sorry. The universe is populated not only by physical parasites, but spiritual and transdimensional parasites that are here to cause havoc. And they've infiltrated and controlled all the secret agencies and even transferred technology to our government. People should know that. They think, oh, that's just a peripheral theory. No, it isn't. This is the central point of why world government's being set up. It's being set up because the powers of darkness, through these transdimensionals, have actually transferred technology to world government, which already still exists as we speak. World government is not a future thing. It exists right now. They just don't want to tell people that they've already made the transition while they're stepwise moving toward the mark of the beast system, a biometric world currency, when they start upgrading and genetically altering the human race, and when they outlaw wild reproduction. People say, no, that can't happen. Dr. Deagle, you can't be telling the truth. I am. And we are under a demonic horde that runs our world that's not just spiritual, it's physical, it's here.
Yes, yes, we better face up to the evidence, because there is good evidence of that.
Right, and the fact is people don't want to hear it. And of course,
the famous UFO researcher that we mentioned, who wrote, among other things, The Mothman Prophecies, 1975, he said, these things, according to my investigation, do not conform to the natural laws of our environment. So this is true. There are manipulations of matter and energy being involved in this. Now, although they originate from the spiritual world, they can produce very powerful temporary physical manifestations on the material level as well.
Right.
And however a UFO is produced, it uses an extremely large amount of energy concentrated in one spot. Now, the weight of evidence suggests that these are paramountly physical, paramountly spiritual, interdimensional manifestations.
The best way, actually, let's even change the word spiritual to hyperdimensional.
Hyperdimensional is a good word, yes.
Right,
spiritual can be misunderstood.
Yeah, let me explain. In our physical world that our physicists described to date, they theorized up to 10 dimensions. There's actually 12. There's 5 dimensions of the physical world, the first 4 are directions, then the 4th is time, and the 5th is what's called the torsion field or curved time-space. That's why the number for Satan is 5. There's 7 spiritual hyperdimensional realms, and the actual soul, we call the light body of the higher self, the soul that God created that inhabits your physical body, exists in hyperspace. That's why it's not bound to time-space. That's why, for example, when someone in a mine in Africa knows that their relative has died, they just go to the head of the mine, and usually they work these people like slaves, but the mine owners never argue when they know they have to return home to go to a funeral because of the relative, because that person knows 100% of the time, and it's well known among Africans that this is the case. All around the world, people know something terrible has happened to a relative if they have a knowing. And the fact is, it's because your spirit is not bound by time or space. It exists in hyperspace. Well, so do these beings. They exist in hyperspace. They're very real, but they have a technology that's able to manifest and come from their, if you want to call it, their dimensional terrain into the physical world.
Yes. And what we're looking at here, actually, is manipulation of mass and energy, and that's quite scientific.
Right, it is. And they transfer technologies to our governments to create the new financial world order and to transfer technologies to these world governments to crush any nation that won't play the ball. And it's happening as we speak right now with the nations of Russia and China that are being forced gradually, and all those other nations, into the new financial order by these demonic hordes. People don't see it because they see all these layers of government and officials and people, when behind the scenes, like it says in Ephesians, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and power and spiritual wickedness in high places. That's right out of the Bible. People need to understand what the Bible is saying is not just a matter of fact. It's true. It's true. It's actually telling you something that tells you world government is satanic.
Yes. I think we need to be aware that we have to put on some spiritual, or shall I say, hyperdimensional glasses to understand what's going on here.
Yeah, exactly.
To understand who these entities are and what's motivating them. Now, we were discussing off here, Dr. Bill, the fact that a lot of people don't understand what they can't experience, what they haven't personally experienced. They think that anything else is not real. Well,
exactly.
The question may be, we may ask this question, is it reasonable to assume that the objects we see with our eyes are the only ones which exist?
Yeah, it's silly.
Now, bear in mind that all solid objects have a vibrational frequency within the range perceptible to the human eye.
Exactly.
What if the vibrational frequency could be altered into vibrations outside the visible range?
Right. In other words, if it's on a phase, it wouldn't
being seriously considered today.
Yeah. In other words, there's vibration, what's called a time sequence of this particular dimensional plane, which is basically, in a sense, our time sequence of the subatomic particles called chronon. And if you have time sequences of vibration in the fifth dimensional plane or hyperdimensional plane, those objects, which may be in the same parallel, if you want to call it space, literally in our local space of Earth, or even inside the planet, can actually exist on a different dimensional plane and physically are in a different world.
Yes. Now, of course, we've got to realize that it's not easy to adjust one's thinking.
Right.
But the evidence now strongly pressing itself upon us is that of another dimension from which these non-human aliens, if you want to call them that, are orchestrating their control and their manipulation.
Plus, they also can also leap across the actual dimensional plane, because all the ancients worshipped the belt of Orion, which is the positions of the three giant pyramids of Giza, and they worshipped the ancient fish gods, the amphibians, the Dogon, they called them Gorgons, was the ancient term that the high priest used. These were the fishmen that were the 200 that landed in Mount Horeb in Lebanon, that transferred technology to ancient mankind, and the ancient technologies for life and regeneration to the ancient Egyptians. And people don't understand that these beings were real. They weren't just thought up in the minds of an ancient people and to have these technologies. They were real.
Yeah, every bit of smoke has a fire behind it. Exactly.
And so we need to understand that it's not physically possible to build the pyramids without higher technology than ancient man had. Back in a moment.
What a glorious time to be free. What a beautiful world this will be.
Welcome back. Remarkable show today. And again, people say, Dr. Deagle, when are you going to talk about these things again? Well, we're talking. And you may find some of these things, you may be skeptical and say, nah, I can't believe that. This isn't important. Yes, it is. Your world leaders take orders from transdimensional beings, otherwise known as IFOs, identified fiendish objects. These beings can manifest in the physical realm. They transfer technology to mankind. I know, having worked at these special agencies and talk to very high-level people at the people like NSA agency, Space Command, etc. People may be skeptical, but the fact is that mankind is in the grip of the jaws of the dragon. And his time is over. And we're talking about a transdimensional, galactic, and cosmic force of innumerable worlds and dimensions that are literally trying to stifle the creation of mankind. Is like the apple of God's eye. This is a blue jewel, the planet Earth, a womb creating not only physical souls being birthed into a higher level being state where we become eternal ones, the bride of the Most High God. That's why it talks about the church being the bride. The fact is we are not yet even born. We are literally living as fetuses or little ones inside the womb of earth. And if people don't grasp that, don't understand this reality, when we consume ourselves with both our economy and our war and the cosmic and galactic cycles, we don't see the big picture that not only are there midwives here to try to help the birthing of the new creation of mankind, as Jesus said, the kingdom is going to come on earth and he would reign on earth. But we also see the power of darkness, a galactic and cosmic abortionist, as Satan and his power and legions of darkness. And they are transdimensionals, and they are here, and they are transferring technology, and they are ready to crush mankind like a bug. And people think, you're just making this up. It's far more malevolent than the Battlestar Galactica, story, or the story of V. We have serpentine beings that come from across the vast of space-time. No, what we're dealing with is far more evil, far more intelligent, far more malevolent than people in their mundane intellect could even conceive in their darkest imagination or nightmares.
Well, you put that very, very well, Dr. Bill. That makes it very, very clear to any listener who's got a thinking cap on today.
Yeah, 56 billion stars, this is from scientists, in our galaxy alone that could have Earth-like planets. Just Earth-like. 56 billion stars in our galaxy. And there are more galaxies in the universes in our known universe than stars in our galaxy. Now, if that doesn't make you feel so small, so insignificant, it also makes your mind open to realize that the vastness of our universe, and I was shown this when I had my near-death experience at 8.5, and God showed me that our universe is yet an elemental particle in an atom that makes up a water molecule in a large universe. That's how great our world is. God is still so omniscient that he cares about every hair on our head. He cares about the little fetus in the mother's womb, whether she's in Africa or America or Ireland. He cares about the individual that's going to be a victim of war. He cares about the person doing great evil because of ignorance. Because evil is the lack of knowledge of the Most High God and the knowledge of what we are, what kind of a being we are, and what kind of a universe we are in, and whether we're listening to the right voice, the voice of the Most High that speaks to our spirit and our consciousness, or the voice of darkness. The people in the movie like Star Wars, Darth Vader, listened to the voice of Darth Maul and the Darth Sidious and these horrible monsters and became Darth Vader. Well, we need to start turning back to the Most High God and listen to the voice of the Creator God who made us in His image. We are literally to become the bride of the Most High God. We are to be co-creators of a future where our will is locked with the will of the Creator God and we become eternal beings. We are not just meant to be a temporal being here living from years to decades on the planet Earth with a very mundane existence. We are meant to be eternal beings, to be midwives of other worlds, to be the guardians of the universe, to be the co-creators of a world where God's order is the order. It's not an order out of darkness. It's an order of darkness. It's not a dialectic of creating chaos to create our order into the darkness, like the Satanists and these transdimensionals have conspired to do for so long. So let's continue. The reality of the other dimension, we're now up to. This is an amazing chapter.
Well, it's not, as I was about to say, Dr. Bill, it's not easy to adjust one's thinking, and many of us may be in shock to hear what we're hearing today. But the evidence now strongly presses itself on us that there is another dimension from which these non-human entities are manipulating.
Right. And they're manipulating because they're
pointing more and more to the possibility of, as you put it, a hyper-dimensional world, if you can call it a world or a reality, which exists as another dimension all around us, not in some far-off place. And there are many scientists today who are open-minded enough to conclude that our cosmos consists of frequencies or dimensions of light that share the same space as we do, just as radio and television frequencies share the same space that we breathe.
Yeah, and by the way, these hyperdimensions have prescience over the world of chaos and entropy in our universe. In other words, what's created in the spiritual realm literally imprints and controls the order out of the physical realm of chaos in our universe. In other words, the spiritual realm dictates and the creation of the physical world, which is why these demonic beings are literally invading our world to take it over and say we're the gods of our universe. They're not. They're just the perverters of our universe. The God of our universe is a creator that doesn't destroy.
These are the hijackers.
These are the hijackers. These are pirates. These are like the Somali pirates have arrived in our dimension and have actually said they're going to, rule us. And people don't understand that, yes, they can physically leap across space-time. They can know about things in vague terms about the future. It's like you hear people talk about remote viewing. I get a kick out of this because there's all kinds of false prophets that, like the ancient ones went to King Saul went to the Witch of Endor to try to get and of course they resurrected supposedly the spirit of the prophet Samuel to summon and ask questions about what he should do next. People don't understand when they're doing UFO research and when they're summoning these things, they're literally opening up spiritual portals through permission to bring in demonic activity into our world.
Yes. Now, we've often heard reports of so-called alien encounters or even alien abductions.
Right.
Now, it's interesting that UFO researchers from both sides of the fence, different angles, are coming to realize, people like Valley, Keel, Mack, and others. Psychiatrist John Mack comes from Harvard University, and he founded the Program of Extraordinary Experience Research. It's PEER.
Right.
And to explain abduction claims, Mack, who was at first a skeptic, looked hard for any and every psychological root cause that could be involved, but even perhaps childhood abuse.
Right.
Around about 1990, he began interviewing people who were claiming to have been abducted by these so-called aliens. And over the next few years, he would interview more than 100 people in this category, and he practiced psychoanalysis on each one of them. And his conclusion was that these folk were solid citizens, they had a sound mind, and he became convinced that something real and important was definitely going on. It was not in their imagination.
Right. But the thing they don't make the connection is they don't realize it's the legions of Lucifer, the bringer not of the light of the Most High God, but the blue light of darkness, the blue light of the demonic horde that's trying to take over our world.
Precisely. Now, John Mack eventually made a statement, and he said, these abduction accounts are so congruent among healthy people from all over the United States, because it was people in the United States that he was interviewing.
Right.
And he said, people who are not in touch with each other, who have nothing to gain and everything to lose by telling their stories.
Right.
And after years of research, he came to the conclusion, similar to that of other researchers, that these so-called visitors are interdimensional from another reality.
Exactly. Back in a moment. Going live and remarkable information. The chapter 15. Tell us about this, because this is amazing. And a lot of people say, well, why would you discuss these things? And I'd say, well, because it's important. It's important that people understand what's really going on rather than just kind of speculating on it.
Yes, absolutely. Now, people who have been abducted and people who say they've had contact with these so-called aliens tell interesting stories, Dr. Bill, as you know. And the alien storyline, there's something very suspicious about what they're claiming.
That's why I talk to organizations like, Alien Shift, and even when I tried to speak and give the truth to things like Project Camelot, because people think, Dr. Deagle, you don't believe all this stuff. I said, no, I understand. I said, I'm a Messianic believer. I believe the Bible. I believe what God says. I've had personal experiences, and some of them I can't share. But I can tell you I have a level of knowledge where I only display literally less than 10% of what I know, because I'm not permitted to talk about it. But I can tell you what you write in this book, this is probably one of the most important books that anybody can read aside from the Bible, because it lays bare the nature of our world. It lays bare the ancient archaeology. It tells people that if you understand that the Creator God cares for us, and He's written His seal in the book and the prophecies that are about to happen in our day, that don't be nervous when you see wars and rumors of wars. Don't be nervous when you see economies crash. Don't be nervous when you see the rise and you see the back of the dragon empire rising on earth and smell the sulfur of a world economic order. Don't be fearful, because our God is God. We are like those three, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in the fire. We are like those who think, surely He will save us. And one of my favorite shows on TV is the Doomsday Preppers. People think in running around and scurrying around like hamsters that they're going to save themselves. And I tell people it's important to prepare. It's important to prepare for tsunamis, water shortages, and so on. But the only thing that's going to save us is a relationship with the Most High God. Without that relationship, the legions of Satan, the legions of Lucifer, are going to consume you like an hors d'oeuvre on a barbecue. If you don't have a relationship with the Creator God and you think, I'm fit enough, I've got enough bullets, lots of bullets, I've got all kinds of things, you're a fool. Just like when I said back in 1999 when I traveled to 42 cities in Israel, and I spoke to a gentleman who had a berm shelter that could withstand a 5-megaton warhead, and he had 50 caliber anti-aircraft machine gun and all kinds of missiles and everything and rocket-propelled grenades. I said, you know what? If you pray and you say you're a Christian and you go toward your food and your weapons and God's telling you to go in the opposite direction, you better listen to God. But people don't do that. So let's get into this chapter on the legions of Lucifer, because people say, well, why is this all integrated into one? I said, the most important thing in this message is to have a relationship with the Creator.
That's the bottom line, absolutely. Now, as for listening to the claims of these so-called aliens, in the early days of UFO contacts, soon after World War II, in the late 40s, early 50s, into the 60s, it was common for UFO contacts with aliens to receive claims that they were visiting from Venus.
Right.
And we have the example of that well-known example of Frank Strange in his 1959 encounter with the Venusian, who called himself Val Thor.
Right.
But that was before the space program sent out probes into that region. And it's interesting that nowadays most aliens are not purporting to come from from our own solar system, but they're coming now from further away in the galaxy where we cannot test their claims. Isn't that interesting how their story has changed?
Yeah, well, of course it changes because the lie is being unveiled by the fact that we are developing technology to prove that if you go to Venus at 600 degrees and even lead melts. Not a good place to live. I mean, you know.
Yeah, so these intruders are changing the identity of their home planet so we cannot check up on them. Rather something fishy, I think, there.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Now, UFO researchers Ankerberg and Weldon made an interesting question. How credible is it to think that literally thousands of extraterrestrials would fly millions or billions of light years simply to teach New Age philosophy, to deny Christianity and support the occult? Is this the message that they're bringing to us? Yes, it is. Why would they fly so far to bring us that message?
Well, because they want to replace it with...
The truth is they did not have to fly here.
Right.
They're already here.
Right.
And that might be a startling thought to many people, but increasingly the evidence suggests that they've been emanating from our own planet Earth, from a different dimension.
Yeah, in fact, if you actually listen to the Bible and parse between the Hebrew words in the Old Testament and look at the original Aramaic and Greek, you can actually discern that, in fact, what God is saying is they're in a different dimensional plane in the physical space of the bowels of the earth.
Yes, that's a good way to explain it. They're occupying our same physical space on a different plane.
Right, and they actually live in the bowels of the planet Earth.
In the bowels of planet Earth.
Yeah.
Now, many of them are claiming to be here to save us from looming disaster, and they speak good things to us, as it were.
Right, he tells the globalists to build their hotels.
To be non-friendly.
Yeah.
Now, let's not be fooled about this. Things are not always what they appear to be. There's evidence that these are simply two fronts to a single clever game orchestrated by the same group. And they're intelligent, they're able to communicate with us, but they're liars and they're con artists, and you could never trust them, Dr. Bill.
Exactly. And, of course, what people don't understand is people like George Bush Sr. finished Project Omega with all the secret agencies on Earth. CIA, NSA, MI6, every agency on the planet, that these are firmly under the what I call the clause of the Legion of Lucifer. And people don't understand that. They don't realize, and I know there's agents listening out there that are in the NSA, the Pentagon, and elsewhere that listen to this program. They know this truth. They know that there's an occult origin to the demonic horde and the transfer of technology to our governments. They know that there's evil plans to create new genetically hybridized superhumans. They know these things are real. They know that the powers of darkness have literally gripped the world and are trying to lurch it forward into an economic chaos and war, so during the dialectics of chaos, they can create their new order and they can completely expunge and execute every Christian, every believer, every real Jew, praiser of the Most High God, every real Hebrew from the planet, which is why, of course, they want to have a war against all of the people that are the followers of Islam that actually are blood Jews, Hebrews, because they were converted at the sword to Islam from being Christians and Jews over 1,000 years ago by the hordes of Islam. People don't understand all of this is completely open and understandable if you understand when you see the evil of, say, the Vatican and the hat of the Pope, which is the mitre. It's the hat of Dagon, the fish god, that goes right back to ancient Sumer in Egypt. They knew this stuff. They know what they're doing. They're high-level druidic Satanists that worship the Gorgons.
You see that same hat on the old monuments.
Exactly. It's the same God, the fish god that fell before the Ark of the Covenant that the Palestinians had. It's the same statue that was broken in pieces right in front of the Ark. People don't understand these truths. This is literally, today, one of the prophecies of Daniel says, close up and seal the words to the time of the end. 2012 is another time. It's called the Year of the Dragon for any excuse. I was born in the Year of the Dragon. This is the Year of the Dragon. My name given by the Most High God was Slayer of the Dragons, Keeper of the Way. And everyone has their four-letter Hebrew Aramaic name given to them by the Most High God. And today it's revealed the schemes of darkness. And people think, oh, well, this is just periphery. No, that's why you don't have proper health care that lengthens the human lifespan. That's why we're not returning to the years of the patriarch, which is the first scriptures written by Jesus in the synagogue when he first came out into ministry. That's why we don't have this, because the powers of darkness have got a grip on medicine, the law, which is all high priests. Again, remember that the bar is a British authorized registry, is one level below a lord and one level, or bail, which is their real term, and one level above a gentleman. I mean, this is all satanic. And every one of our politicians, without an exception, is of some ilk or other, some form or other, a high-level satanic mason. Every single one.
It's interesting that you should just say what you said, because I was going to say something very similar. We're coming on the same wavelength here from two different sides of the world, Dr. Bill.
Well, tell us what you've seen and heard. You're all the way in New Zealand, and I'm sure with your vast experiences, you can see that as Jesus was taken high above the temple and said, "These are my kingdoms," as Satan said to Jesus, "Worship me, and they'll all be yours."
Yes, the current wars, the crime, the corruption in our communities point straight at this sinister and deadly organization, the Legion of Lucifer.
Exactly. If you underestimate their evil, their malevolence, their eternal goals will be snuffed out quickly by the creator of the universe. And we are not just a little bug, a worm on the planet Earth. We are the bride of the Most High God. We are the co-creators of the universe. And with the God's wisdom and our soul fusing with the spirit of the creator of the universe, we will rule with the power and scepter of the creator God. That's what our destiny is, not to be a victim. Amazing book.
Beforeus.com,
The Forbidden Secret. You need to read this.